and welcome to the Honest Property Podcast with your hosts, Becky and Ruth. And we like to talk about all things property, business, and entrepreneurship. And today we have Ben, who is the founder of Bloom Lettings. Welcome, Ben.
Hello.
Also, if anyone is watching this podcast today, Becky and I, this is the first time Becky and I are actually not together podcasting. So we've done a lot of trials to make sure that we can podcast separately today.
Okay, it works fine. You will get to see this. Yeah, thanks so much for being on this episode, Ben. We drive past Ben's letting shop nearly every day. And, I love how orange it is as well.
We saw the colour and we were like, yes.
Thanks. Yeah. No, that was on purpose. We wanted to pick a colour that nobody else was using, which we did at the time, although a lot of people now are using orange, which I don't think has anything to do with us, but it's nice and warm and it stands out, I think, on the high street.
Yeah, happy colour.
Yeah. We're happy people.
Yeah, clearly. So you and Ruth go, well, you're connected because you actually went to the same school way back when.
Briefly. I think Ruth had a bit more success there than I did. Fortunately for her, unfortunately for me.
But you know what? I mean, okay, we obviously briefly had a really brief chat before we started recording, but you said that you were kicked out of school?
Yeah, so I thought I didn't go to Redcliffe School. I went to St Catherine's, which is just outside of Bristol. But I grew up in Southfield, really close to Redcliffe. I always wanted to go there, and because a lot of my friends from primary school went to Redcliffe. And I even went to church for a couple of years to try and get in because they have a point system to get in. But the main school wanted absolutely nothing to do with me. And that decision was proven absolutely right when I went to sixth form. Because I don't know, I just don't think education was for me, really. And I joined Redcliffe sixth form doing the 3 sciences and history, having just kind of sleepwalked through my GCSEs and managed to pass them just about. And I underestimated the amount of work required at sixth form. So the plan originally was to go and was to drop out for the final sort of 8 months of the sixth form year and to actually reapply, which a lot of people were planning to do already at the time. Just be a year later than everybody else, choose subjects that maybe weren't quite so demanding and maybe that I was a bit more interested in. Mr. Champion and I parted on good terms, I hope. But I got kicked out because I decided I was going to leave, so I had to sit some exams anyway. Because otherwise you get charged for them. And I ended up falling asleep in a couple of them and snoring quite loudly. So they just asked me not to come back until I wouldn't be fined to not take the rest of the exam.
You know what? This is a common sort of story for entrepreneurs, though. It tends to be that the traditional educational system doesn't work out for entrepreneur type.
No.
And so we are forced, because we're not going through the traditional academic process of becoming a lawyer or a doctor or something.
Yeah.
We're forced to find creative ways to basically make sure that we can keep up with everybody.
My dog was at the door.
Yeah, we're forced to find other ways, basically. And we become problem solvers and we just think outside the box a lot more. So I think
I'd say as well, when I was at school, I'm a very creative person. I thrived. I was excelled. I'd say I will confidently say excelled at art and all the arty subjects. But when it came to school as well, I wasn't necessarily the most academic, and that wasn't nurtured so much at school. So I was also looking out the window, wanting to get my hands dirty, and it wasn't something at first I went to an all-girls school, very lucky to go to the school because you did get a lot more time with the teachers because it was less students, but it still meant that I wasn't as
engaged.
Yeah, just not engaged because I wasn't interested in all the subjects.
Yeah. I think it's exactly the same. It just wasn't for me. And I think if you look at my wife, Hannah, who also went to Redcliffe, she passed with flying colours, went to university, got a great degree, got onto a graduate program, and loves her career and is doing really, really well. So it's not for everybody, and it certainly wasn't for me, and not for you guys by the sound.
No. I did go to university, but it's only because everyone was told to. You were just encouraged to. But I just don't believe now that that's what I just don't believe.
Well, so after that, I decided to get into work for 6 months for that I had before I was supposed to, 6 to 8 months before I was supposed to go back. And I got into an apprenticeship, and back then they had started doing, they'd really started to open up apprenticeships. So I think traditionally before then, and this was probably 15 years ago, apprenticeships were more trade based. So it would be electrician, plumber, gas engineer, that was the route that apprenticeships took you down. Back then was when they started to diversify apprenticeships a little bit. So I did one in events management at an art gallery, and then I went and did port operations apprenticeship at Bristol Docks. And so trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And fortunately, there were more options then, and I think even more now.
Yeah, there is. I think because they're more skill based, and I think that's what's missing. I just there's like seen a trend of a return of needing more trades, skilled people.
Oh my God, it's in so much demand. Like you can't have enough plumbers anymore. Yeah, like a job that is really, really required.
Well, I think apprenticeships are just viewed differently now to how they were back then, and they're just a more viable option for people. And going back to what you said, Ruth, I think that is really important, that there are options for those where education doesn't really line up with what they want to do or what they're interested in.
I think it's just changed. It's just changed. And I think there's only so many subjects that you can be pushed into doing as like higher education, but that's just not working for people now. And I think what you've done, like especially we believe that there is going to continue to be a huge rise in entrepreneurship, because we're looking for these options that isn't so black and white anymore. Like we just, a lot more people don't fit into the mold of having all of these like a doctor, lawyer, engineer, a teacher, there is, or a nurse. There's so many options now, which is amazing. And also a bit, I guess you'd say, confusing, but especially the younger generation. But what you've done is, I love that you just decided to go, okay, I'm going to just start something. Where did it come from?
Yes, I want to know after school, how did you get to where you are now?
Yeah, so
why letting?
Yeah, so a couple of apprenticeships that I finished, but they didn't, weren't the one. So that was one of them was at the RWA, that was the events management one. I did for a year, and then I did 6 months at Bristol Port, which was absolutely not for me. And then I landed on my feet with an apprenticeship with an independent letting agency, which I won't name. But I was there for a long time, and I was there for about 8 years, and it was a sales-based job, which I think ultimately was where I belonged at the time. And I was really lucky. It was a really good opportunity.
That's your skills, is it? Sales?
I think so. Yeah, I like to think so anyway. I don't know what other people would say about it. But yeah, and I got the room to really grow and to figure out like myself as an adult, and like, how to work in an office space and how to deal with customers, and just all the real life stuff as well as the work stuff. And the idea for Balloon actually happened, well, it was long before I'd ever planned on starting a letting agency. My friend was doing a design degree, and part of his dissertation was to basically just do a brand for a business. And he, for some reason, decided to do a letting and estate agent, and knew that I worked there, that worked in the industry at the time. So he came to me. His name was Charlie, and he said, "Ben, can you help me build like a letting agency brand?" And I came up with Balloon. Then I don't know if it was Balloon Letting Company then, or if it was Balloon Lets. Then I can't remember. But I've still got it somewhere, like all the old.
Why did you say Balloon?
Branding.
Because it's Bristol.
Still.
Yeah. The name I was really nervous about, because I was thinking, God, in context, it kind of makes sense, but the joke is, obviously, we're renting balloons, and that was always my worry, was that people wouldn't understand what we did.
Think of that.
Yeah.
But that is a valid concern.
Yeah. Well, the reason I thought it'd be fine is because you guys have obviously heard of Elephant, right?
Yeah.
Elephant. And Elephant are cool, and we work with them now. Actually, we're partnered with them, which is really, really exciting. But I thought if Elephant can get away with it, we will eventually get away with it, even if not to begin with.
It makes you stand out. It's not like someone's name letting. Like it. A balloon, like you're bright and orange, and obviously the balloon's so like an. What's the word?
It's like an iconic symbol of Bristol.
Yeah, exactly.
And that
a guest who you know her, Ali. Whoop. And she's
doing great as well, Ali. She's a lovely person.
Her, even with her branding with Abo Activewear, Avocado, but you remember certain objects that stands out, and I think that's brilliant.
Yeah, and also it was important to me that it was something that was relatable to Bristol, because I'm from Bristol. I love Bristol, and I wanted the brand to relate to Bristol. And I thought it would be something like the hot air balloon is something that anyone from Bristol will just recognise as a symbol of Bristol. And also, it's not as widely used. There are loads of companies that use other like, other iconic, like, the suspension bridges used everywhere. And when I was setting up the brand, it was sort of, and I did it with Matt Doherty, who's fantastic as well, who
Well, he told me, I was like,
he went to Redcliffe as well, so everyone goes there. And Matt, doing the branding journey with Matt, I learned an awful lot about it, but also just about the brand itself. So Matt, I still work with today, and he's fantastic. But we just set out we wanted something that a bit more human, warm, welcoming, something that there's a lot of greens, a lot of blues, a lot of blacks in a lot of other companies. There's a lot of Giles and Giles, and there's this sort of thing. So we just wanted something that was going to be a little bit different. And hopefully,
this is why actually we wanted you to come on, because you're just a breath of fresh air. You're fresh, you're new, you're modern. I really feel like you really cater to the young
next generation as well,
instead of the old school model is just it's old school, it's outdated. And what you have done, you really are just like the future of what it's supposed to it should be like.
That's very kind. I hope you're right, Ruth. I really hope you're right. But you know what? What's interesting actually is I think in my time, I've been doing this for about 12 years. The average landlord today versus the average landlord 12 years ago, it's a very different person generally, because you've got this.
How would you describe them?
I just think the market's changed. I think there's a lot of the new school landlords view property and a lot are growing at a rapid rate as a business. So they're running it like a business, and there's loads of resources out there to learn how to be financially free. And I absolutely hate that term. But there's 100 courses, there's thousands of courses online, there's YouTube videos, there's loads of content out there. Whereas landlords 12 years ago, they were more sort of building a portfolio towards their pension, and they were running it as businesses, but not quite in the same way. The finances were done differently. It was a lot easier to buy back then. So I think landlords now are a bit more sort of purposeful in how they build their portfolio. And it's a bit more professionally done now than it was when I first started doing it.
Yeah. So are you seeing more people sort of our age group, this new school landlord entering the scene?
Yeah, I would say people in their sort of late 20s to sort of like early 40s quite often.
That's so nice. That's like, it's reassuring, because I think when Ruth and I started, we were very much around the old school landlords, and we felt very much out of place. But it is reassuring to know that there's more people, the new school, I like that, new school, that are just having a different approach.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know, I don't think one approach is better than the other. I think it's just different. And I don't know whether, like you guys said, we just end up, appealing to a younger audience, which wasn't, I suppose, like part of the plan, but it maybe has just happened, as a result. One good thing about Bristol, one of the reasons I think we've grown so quickly is it's like it's a big village, isn't it? Everybody knows everybody. Like Ruth and I have never spoken before we arranged this, and we know loads of people in common, and I'm sure Becky, you and I probably do.
Probably.
If you're doing something different and exciting and you're doing a fantastic job, then people hear about it. And that's one of the greatest things about having a business in Bristol working.
Yeah, well, I should have asked this in the beginning, but could you also explain what is a letting agent, just to people who don't know what that term means, and what is the service that you provide, especially for landlords and for tenants?
Yeah, I mean, it'd be awkward if I couldn't answer that, wouldn't it? So, no, I think so. So first and foremost, there's a difference between estate and letting agents. And I think they both often, for the average person who doesn't really know or care, they get chucked into the same bucket. So, and that's because also estate agents quite often will have a lettings arm attached. So estate agency, they sell property. A letting agent, they let and manage property, with management probably being the largest part of those businesses. So landlords come to us and they say, we've got a 2-bedroom flat in X, can you put it on the market for us? So then they've got two options. They can either just have us let it for them, and that means putting it on Rightmove and Zoopla, doing all the viewings, doing the referencing, all the things that the average person would associate with a letting agent. But then there is a second option for management, whereby when the tenants move in, we will remain the main point of contact for them, and we'll deal with maintenance issues, and we'll collect rent for them, and we'll be the main point of contact for tenants. So we're a lot more involved in those tenancies. So simply, we let and manage properties on behalf of landlords.
How have you found it so far, being the head of the? I mean, we've managed properties ourselves, so I mean, you are another level of managing people who manage properties, and then the people in those properties as well. Like, that's a lot of layers. How are you finding it?
Yeah, definitely challenging. And I think I've got the utmost respect for property managers, which I think is the hardest job in property, really. So first and foremost, I try and put really, really fantastic people in those roles, and we pay them really well because it's a tough job. You know, you can't, I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't want to say it's thankless because some people are really grateful for what you do, but fundamentally, you're dealing with tough situations between two different parties who, due to some bad experiences or a lot of industry narratives, those relationships often start off as a me versus you sort of relationship. So, I don't know. My role here, I think I was a bit naive when I set up the business. I thought, I'm a good salesperson. I've got a reputation in the industry. So the rest of it, I can just sort of piece together. I'll just get good people, which was a really naive.
It made sense. Like you've had the
Kind of.
experience,
But then, but I think it took and takes a lot more to run the other areas of business than I was anticipating. So it's been it's been 3.5 years, and it feels like it could have been 10 years. But then also it feels like only yesterday I was on my own. So I don't know. It's been a ride. If I woke up tomorrow and it was 4 years ago and someone said do it all over again, I don't know if I'd be able to. Honestly,
this is called the Honest Property Podcast, so you are allowed to be absolutely honest. It is hard work, and there's a
Really
reason not everyone, it's not suitable for everyone, and that's why we have so much respect for management, like outsourcing management. Like we because we've been there and we've done it and got the t-shirt, and we just really value
everything you have to do, even the viewings or just handling disputes or conflicting characters under one roof. And it's a lot to manage. I think generally people management is the hardest job.
It's hard, and I think I've set up with a few sort of principles, and with the brand, and if you look on our website you'll see that a lot of letting agency websites focus on landlords and fantastic service offering for landlords, which we obviously do as well. But then we also, if you read the front page of our site, you'll see a lot of mention of tenants and tenant care and how tenants are looked after. And that's very, very purposeful because we want to attract people that message resonates with.
Yeah, that makes so much sense.
Yeah, and I think, where I've seen it really, where I've seen tenancies really, really work in the past, in my career elsewhere, is where you've got a landlord who's really focused on offering a fantastic property and looking after their tenants. And you've got a tenant who feels who earn some trust with the landlord of the agent, and they feel respected and valued, an important part of the transaction as well. And through doing that, I'm trying to make life easier for our property managers, because when you've got everyone working towards the same goal, life is a lot easier than, if you've got a landlord who's really reluctant to spend money, and that sort of thing, which, like I said, there's no necessarily wrong or right way of doing it. We just have a way that we like to work, and we try and attract people who like to work the same way.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question, actually. So for you to make life easier for all and to make sure that, because obviously when you're working with landlords and tenants, you all want to be on this, everyone's trying to reach the same goal. Everyone wants everyone to be happy.
Everyone wants everyone to win.
Yeah, like everyone wants to have a nice time. Like what are your preferences or things that you do besides the website to make sure that you're attracting the right sort of landlords, or making sure you've got the right people in your team so that it all works?
So with the team, but we're looking for people with customer service backgrounds, really, and that's for the more sort of junior roles. The senior roles, obviously, we want experienced people, but being passionate about customer service, I think, is important. And again, like with our interview process, we make it very clear that how we like to be different, and how we're trying to be different, and we look for people where that message resonates with them. I think with the tenant journey, it's difficult because I don't think we're doing anything that necessarily reinvents the wheel here. It's all about communication. Again, I'm painting with a very broad brush here, but certainly since post-COVID, it's been very, very easy to let properties up until about a couple months ago. And I think tenants very often, because I've spoken to a lot of them, have felt lost during that process. So it's about making sure that, we are communicating clearly with tenants as we are with landlords, and we're coming back to people quickly. We get, when we make offers, when tenants make an offer for a property, other places I've worked, you say, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, they own £50,000, they want to move in on the 1st of January. Whereas we actually offer them an opportunity to write a cover letter direct to their landlord.
That's amazing.
And that's just a chance for them, because the person who earns the most money isn't necessarily the best tenant. And that's kind of who we're looking for. So they can write as much or as little as they like. And we always say, right, do spend some time on it, because it can be the thing that gets you the property or not. And so there's a bit less guesswork in, it's good for the landlord as well, because they feel like they've got more of a human understanding of the person that's going to be living in their property. And that's kind of what we're about, people here. It's a people-centric business. Tenants are people the same as landlords. And I'm not saying, we're going to prioritize tenants over our landlords, but it's equal. And I think that's important.
You're like a matchmaker.
Yeah, well, really, yeah. I mean, and
Property Cupid.
yeah, God, I've never heard that. I've never heard it that way before, but perhaps. But I think I was a bit naive. I think at the start, I was like, let's like start a movement. Let's change the industry, And I think everyone probably when they're starting businesses has those thoughts. Let's like show everybody that we can do it this way. It's a bit more work, but look at the results, and hopefully more people will do the same thing. And there are fantastic agencies out there. So I'm not going to name names or anything, but I don't think we're doing. It is harder than other places I've worked, but I don't think we're doing anything that shouldn't be expected as a minimum anyway. Really.
The difference that you're doing is that you're treating people not just as a number. You're showing the humanity behind it. Like even that one initiative of saying, oh, we're going to provide a cover letter to be able to allow a landlord to be able to see the real you first instead of just a number, allows a landlord to be able to go, okay, will this person be able to stay, or like how quick of a turnover is my property going to turnover. So I think that's like amazing. That's amazing that you start with that first to be able to provide that for landlords and tenants, because it's no secret the renting in this country, there's not enough supply. So you have to pitch yourself now.
Yeah, and I think it's I don't really understand why more people don't put an emphasis on it. But we're just a very small company, and it's gone well. And I had a first actually this week where we had a landlord get in touch, and I always get really excited still when landlords contact us, because for me it's still amazing that the business is out there in the big wide world, and people have heard of us, because every time I'm like really grateful. But someone contacted us, and I always ask them where they've heard about us, and they said, "Oh, from Reddit," and I was like, "Oh, that's new." Yeah, through Reddit. And I've never had a landlord inbound through Reddit before, because Reddit is a dangerous place for letting agents. It's a dangerous place. And so, and I had a look on Reddit about, and there's people on there who are saying, Balloon are a good company, and Ben's a good chap, good morals and stuff. And that stuff makes me so happy.
Yeah.
Still in the face of like quite a lot of growth, and quite a lot, like I said, the team's sort of almost doubled in size in the last 12 months. But we're still, I hope, hitting the mark. And in 2025, there's going to be another massive emphasis on our core value, which we're going to reinforce with the team. I'm doing some work with Matt on that at the moment, actually.
Because it really does really shine through, and even with all of your, even online with everything that you post, I think it's so important, especially going in 2025. We did a post recently on Instagram just about how it's making it the better ecosystem for your tenants, which inevitably is a butterfly effect for the landlords. If you make sure that you have you're putting the tenants first, like the old school landlord won't exist for very long, who is only prioritizing just the profit over the people. But with the way that you're going, you're really putting the focus on, okay, how can I, obviously with the sales background, how can I make sure that my tenants are happy? And then it makes sure that the investment of the landlord is also a happy one too.
Yeah. And my dream again when I was with Matt and we were writing the goals for Balloon was that one day, a tenant would be sat on right and they'd see a property on with us and they'd be like, thank God this one with Balloon. We know to expect a certain level of, respect and contact and all that sort of stuff. And yeah, I mean, so like it's our job, and I think it is hard because a lot of people that we meet have had a bad experience or heard about bad experiences or have seen a lot of negative news in the press about landlords and agents. So it's our job to win them over during the referencing process. I'm a landlord as well, and I wholeheartedly believe that the first 2 weeks after tenants move in is vital, because when someone moves into a new property, it's very, very unusual that they move in and everything would be absolutely fine. There's always something, however big or small, and how you deal with that as a landlord, or how we deal with that as a managing agent, is going to set the tone for the rest of the tenancy. So, I, as a landlord, will very often give in that first 2 weeks. Oh, you got a problem with the cooker? We'll get we'll get that fixed. Oh, there's a problem, or we'll just say yes to everything, because we're trying to prove to them.
First impressions, isn't it?
First impressions are everything, and if for example, if we say during a viewing a property is going to be professionally cleaned and there's going to be a fridge freezer put in, or whatever, and they move in on day one and none of that stuff's been done, immediately here we go again. We've got
Don't lose face.
yeah, exactly. So that first 2 weeks, and generally, if you can get the onboarding process correctly, if you can get that first couple of weeks done correctly, it makes everyone's life a lot easier.
That's a really good tip, because it's just saying that that humans are flawed, but if you can give a 2-week leeway of being able to solve the problems, like we self-manage at the moment just one property, but where there were little snags and things that hadn't been picked up, and they were solved within a couple of days straight away, and it's kept our tenants very happy and paying their rent on time. They're very happy with basically the customer service. But that's a really, really good tip. First 2 weeks, just sort out what you can and make sure that you have a happy customer, happy tenant.
Yeah, and then at the end of that, they feel it's respect and value. That's like, you hear me say that stuff a lot. It's respect, and that's really, really important.
I don't know if this has been talked about much at all before, but I also want to emphasize that as a landlord, if you treat your letting agent, like your team, well, and that includes your agents, then they're going to, in turn, also look after your property, are more inclined to take better care of your property as well. So is there any tips you've got for landlords or even tenants out there that make your job easier?
I think the hardest thing for us, and everybody I've worked with in property says exactly the same thing, is we feel vilified.
Yeah.
It's kind of like people in, you have these certain careers where people, you're in recruitment, you're in property, you're like that. They're in these certain jobs. And I used to say, I'm in property. When people ask what I did, I said I'm in property. If I just met someone for the first time, because if you say you're a letting agent, just, immediately they start to make judgments about you.
No,
But I thought, again, naively, that if we set up with this vision and this ethos and this set of core values, that we would, I don't know, not be celebrated, but not celebrated necessarily, but just that we would maybe, people would see, okay, these guys are trying to do the right thing. So maybe we get a little bit of leeway.
Logo, I just wanted to say, is when I drive past it, I'm just like, yes, for everything that you stand for. With your slogan, it's for the landlord, for the tenant, and for Bristol.
Yeah.
That's what it says, isn't it? And I'm like, that speaks volumes.
Yeah. I'm really happy, and we're doing a bit of work on the brand now, again, just to try and flesh it out a little bit, because everything's happened quite quickly, really, 3.5 years. And for the first 9-10 months, it was just me on my own. So it's been it's been a bit of a whirlwind, but now we're in a really, really good spot. We've got some fantastic people with great experience at the head of each department. We've got it's just a really, really good team, and team is everything, because it's a tough job. Everyone works really hard for me here. So I make sure that everyone here is looked after, because it can be a really, really tough job.
Yeah. What do your favourite tenants or landlords do?
Oh God, it's so different. I mean, I suppose landlords trust us. Trust us, because we're on your side, and we don't want to have any landlord relationships where it's us against you.
Yeah.
And because I've done this for such a long time, I've let thousands and thousands of properties, and generally, if you just give us some trust, give me your trust, we're here and we're looking out for you, and just understand that. And it's the same with tenants. I think that sometimes it's we've got an issue, we need it sorted today, and it's like, okay, well, we'll get it sorted as soon as we can, but no one can come till tomorrow. It's just a little bit of understanding that we are human beings and we're trying to do our absolute best for you, but that doesn't mean that it can happen immediately. So just a little bit of patience. Us not having something sorted immediate isn't because we don't want to, because it would be amazing if an issue comes in and we just make one phone call and then off it is and it's sorted and dealt with.
Thing is, you're not robots either, and I think sometimes it can be we are in an age where customer service just gets faster and faster and faster because of AI. But also when you are smaller companies, that I think it's managing those expectations, isn't it, with your tenants, to go, we are people, and we will, and this is the time frame that we can realistically get to you. And
we want to help everybody. We really do. That's what we're about. And I think one of the things that isn't really talked about at the moment is that with raising rents comes raising expectations, which is absolutely how it should. If you're 5 years ago you're paying £1,000, £900 for a 1-bedroom flat, now you're paying £1,200-1,300 for a 1-bedroom flat in the same area. Of course you're going to want a bit more for your money. And I think you've seen this especially in the student market, and student properties have become a lot more difficult to manage and a lot more difficult to let, the last few years. And I don't think that's necessarily wrong, but I just think that needs to be understood, that how much rents have gone up. It's really hard to think about when you're in it.
Do you think that's if it's a guarantor, whoever's the guarantor, usually the parents, that's it's their pressure on the students for that higher expectation?
Certainly sometimes, but I think just tenants are more aware now. Students are certainly more aware now. But if you look at, I always use my wife's house in Cardiff as an example. She paid $275 a month, and the kitchen sink didn't work for the last 3 months of the tenancy, so she would fill her washing up bowl from the bath, which is next door. And they just kind of like got on with it. But at $275, I mean, don't get me wrong, I don't think that's right. It should have been fixed, obviously. But what I mean is, when you're paying $275 each a month, it's a lot easier to stomach something like that than when you're paying $700, $750 each a month. So that's something that's definitely changed. I mean, Cardiff versus Bristol, I don't know if rents were over $275 not in 10 years ago, but certainly when I first got into this, a rent per room was £400 a month, in the good areas. And now, especially for University of Bristol, it's not uncommon to be $750, $850 a room now, plus bills.
Yeah, the standard is like got their own en suites and everything.
Yeah, exactly. So, it's I don't necessarily think that's the wrong thing, but that's definitely something that's changed. I don't think it's talked about very often.
What is the biggest changes that got on that topic? What are the biggest changes that you've seen within the time that you've been in this industry with how the rental market is going?
Yeah, well, I started I started in 2011, so 2 years after the crash, and the industry then was certainly still feeling the effects of that. So back then, it was there was a lot more supply than there was demand, which is hard to imagine now. But, we'd have 1 or 2 viewings at properties, people would negotiate quite hard a lot of the time. And, it was much more difficult to let properties back then. Certainly post-pandemic, and, I always used to joke about this with a couple of guys who worked for me who hadn't done it before. You put something on the market at the right price and the photos are decent, you're going to let it within a week. You might even get 60 phone calls back then, in 2022 or 2021, 2022. So now that there's just, Bristol's just changed completely. It's so much more popular now, I think. We have one of the highest student retention rates in the country as well. So everyone who studies here stays. So it's become, this is one of the reasons I think what we're doing is important, because back then, 12 years ago, tenants were treated fantastically because you really needed something from them. And as you need something from them less and less, the properties let so much more easily, I think tenants' perceived value has become less and less, which is not the way it should be, I think.
Yeah, that's a shame. Yeah, that's a shame because...
How have you guys found it? I mean, how long have you been landlords for?
Around about the same time, I think.
Yeah, we started with HMOs.
And we were targeting students at the time, but we also positioned our properties next to the hospital and MOD and stuff. So that meant that we could, if it couldn't be students for whatever reason, then we could have a professional from.
Yes,
we could pivot. And I think our initial thoughts were were students, but then it was very short-lived. Be honest, it didn't end up being students for very long. Most of the time it was professionals.
Well, that's another thing. I mean, over the last couple of years, another thing that's changed massively is the volume of investment in North Bristol and South Gloss for the student market.
Yeah,
it's been wild, and I think a lot of landlords have seen the benefits up there and have invested, and then that's caused a bit of a glut of properties up there now. So it's been a really, a couple of years ago, if you'd have asked me, how does the student market run from month to month, I'd have been able to give you a really, really good idea of what's going to happen when. But no, it's been a lot more difficult to predict the last couple of years.
Yeah, I've also just seen the standard of these properties for students or just shared houses. Beautiful.
Yeah.
They're so nice.
Way nicer than my house.
Isn't that always the case when you're a landlord, business owner? The money goes back into the business.
Yeah, definitely.
So where do you think you'll be taking balloon lettings in the next 5 years? What's your vision?
So first and foremost, we want to grow, but we want to grow in a measured way. We don't want to become overwhelmed with work, which is a really, really good problem to have. Growth, we don't want growth at the expense of service. So, and this year's been a crazy year of growth, to be honest with you. Next year, it's about understanding where we are as a business now. We're not the new guy on the block, really, I don't think anymore. We're one of the biggest student providers in North Bristol now. So
you're signed everywhere. You are the go-to for Bristol.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to be the number one student agent if we're not there already. I like to think we're close. And then there's a couple of options really. But sorry, before I get into that, yeah. So we want to sort of come to terms with the fact that we've grown to a different stage of the business now, and with that we need to improve on systems. So we need to make life easier for the guys in the office. So we're investing in a lot of new, like some market leading like CRM software, and we're just going to be tweaking and refining all of our processes so that we can deal with the next phase. From there, then it becomes and I've had this thought a little bit, is that the student arm, I think, because in my previous job, I ran the student department there for years and years. So I knew a lot of student landlords. This is one of the reasons that we've set up and have grown to that side of the business so quickly. But almost, it's growing a lot more quickly than the professional side. So I'm considering, maybe starting another office somewhere in North Bristol that would be student only. And then we would sort of we have some sales staff up there, and we'd run all the admin from our office in Westbury. But then I'd also at some point love to get an office on North Street and look at South Bristol. That's where I grew up. I grew up just off North Street. So there's a shop that I've been looking at for years that I would love to get onto. But yeah, I'm very grateful for where we are now. So, yeah, I don't want to go into it anymore, but I've got a lot of plans. There's just a couple of different options, and I'm not sure which way to lean yet.
Are you enjoying the business side as opposed to being like the agent at the?
Oh, that's the most fun. The business bit's the most fun.
I was going to say, if anyone's watching this, I could just see your face light up when you were talking about all those plans, and that made me really excited.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
I was like, yeah.
Yeah.
Get it.
It feels like it. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, less and less. I'm very, very involved in the day-to-day running of the business at the moment. So I always want to be involved, but I need to get some structure in place so that I can look at growing the business. I need to spend more time on the business, less time in the business, really. So that's going to be a bit of a focus, which is difficult because I love all of our customers and I really like getting involved, So I don't think there'll ever be a point where I won't be. Yeah, I that's the bit that really excites me, is where can we go now? Because it feels like we're at a bit of a crossroads now. We've done a lot of the really, really hard work, because those first 9 months, anyone thinking about starting up a business on their own, really, really think about it, because don't get me wrong, it's really, really rewarding. But the first 2 years, there were a lot of occasions where I was like, why did I do this? Why did I choose this?
Do you have any tips for if you are starting a business?
Yeah, first and foremost, do all your adventures out of the way before you start. All your traveling out of the way, because once because that's one of the only things is I'd always thought about moving abroad, and with my wife's work, we looked at that quite seriously, or we looked at doing some traveling and this, that, and the other. And then the business it does keep you anchored where you are, which is one of the only. I think it's a downside that people don't really think about, because you think you're your own boss. Oh, I can come in when I want. I can do what I want. But you'll find that you've never worked harder. Yes, you technically can do those things, but you won't if you want to succeed. But although that said, I think one of the things that's been really, really important for me, and I think why I found the first couple of years so difficult, is you have to set boundaries for yourself.
Oh my God! Yes.
So and back then I was working every hour every day, and I'd moved from my dining table to my sofa at about 9 p.m. I'd collapse for an hour, go to sleep, get up at 6, go back to my dining table, and just do it over and over again. And I think now I set very strict boundaries. I don't work weekends now, really. Very rarely. There's 2 times of the year where I go off. I take 2 weeks off in May and 2 weeks off in October, and that's a non-negotiable. I'm always off then, and I don't have my phone with me then. And so you've got to make sure that you're looking after yourself.
I'm so glad you're saying that,
because we went through this whole whirlwind as well.
Yeah, and the business will take as much as you'll give it, And I think it's easy for me to say now, but there'll come a point where it won't need as much as you're willing to give it, and the business is only going to succeed as well as you personally are succeeding. So you just need to make sure that you are looked after. You're the best resource for the business. So you've got to make sure that you're not burning out.
Is it at a point yet that when you go on holiday, it's able to function without you needing to be there?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
that is the ideal position, and I think you do have to put in the effort, like you have at the beginning of it's basically growing a baby. It takes time.
It takes time. People don't.
It takes energy.
People don't understand that, especially where we've been through that experience when we were in our early teens, and you feel like you can't switch off, you are trying to grow something. We were also investing on the side, and it's difficult to, I think a good lesson we learned recently was just surround yourself with other people who are also on that same journey, because it can be so lonely when you don't have other people who can relate to that, relate to like actually having to sacrifice some time, maybe saying no to events or going out with friends because you're trying to focus on building something that you love.
Yeah, definitely. And I think people are so important. Like my wife Hannah and one of my best mates Paul put me through some tough times, but it is incredibly rewarding. Like every time that chat from Reddit, like people are talking about some Reddit. I like, or like you guys, and the office has been a big one. I feel like the office, since we moved in here, people have started to take notice a little bit, somewhat. I like to think anyway. And like,
it looks really welcoming. I'm like, that looks like a cool place to work.
You're more than welcome.
Yeah, we'll come in with some biscuits and tea, just like
come say hello. That would be nice. Now that's what we want. We don't want people. I mean, we want to fight that stereotype, and we are people, and we are nice people, and we want to help. So please come in, and we'd love to meet you, and we'd love to chat with you, and we'd love to.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been. I was actually. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of there's like an entrepreneurs event called Entreconf Go in Bristol. Have you heard about that? It's run by it's called Entreconf Go. It's run by Media Clash, who do the Bristol Property Awards and Life Awards and all that sort of stuff.
Ooh, okay.
So I'm supposed to be doing a talk there next year, actually. And I think because did you guys ever listen to a Diary of a CEO podcast? You must,
of course, yeah.
I listened to that religiously when I first started the business a few years ago, when it was a business podcast. And I thought it was absolutely great. And he talked about imposter syndrome and burnout and all the stuff that was so valuable. And now it's gone in a different direction, which I think is a massive shame, because that was great for me when I first started out. Like hearing all those challenges, and someone just being like raw and honest about it was really valuable.
Well, yeah. Appreciate you sharing your story now, because you are literally doing that for other people, and the realities and insights and like what it takes. Yeah, someone somewhere is going to get huge value from your story. So you're just passing that forward.
But we entrepreneurs, it's hard. We've got to stick together. So anybody wants to reach out, I'll gladly have a chat with anybody about and offer advice if I can. But I think I'm a long way from having made it. I'm still figuring it out as I go along.
I think you've achieved so much. I think Ruth and I can both agree. Where can people find you?
Me personally, or the business?
Both.
So yeah, if you do want to reach out, LinkedIn's a good place. So just Ben Giles on LinkedIn. Otherwise, just have a look on the website, which is balloonlets.co.uk. And you can reach out that way as well. But yeah, we're hoping to get a bit more active on social media in the new year, expand our reach a little bit there.
Amazing. Well, I'll put those links, just send them over to us, and I'll pop them in the show notes so that everybody can access them below or above, whether it's on YouTube or some other platform. But we really, really appreciate having you on the pod. I would love to meet up in person, since we're all Bristolians. And then if anyone has any questions for Ben, send us a DM. Potentially, maybe we could do another episode if you just want more reality and what it takes to be a business owner, especially in the lettings world as a modern entrepreneur. Thank you so much, Ben, for being on the episode.
No, thanks for having me, guys. It's been really fun. Thank you.
See you. Bye. Bye.